Marty Brewer.
Here.
Melissa Luck. Gary Manning. Tim Gottschall. Ingrid Glassbrenner. Danielle Cooper. Linda Gentis. David Turk is here. Chad Cosgrove. Frank Severson. Williamson. Not present. Cooey. Nelson. Paul. McGuire. Cosgrove. We have 17 present.
17 present. We have a quorum. We can proceed. Do we have anyone on video feed, on the web, on virtual? There we go. That's the word I'm searching for. Who could lead us in an invocation? You're muted, sir. We can't hear you. We can't hear the invocation. I'm very sorry. We cannot hear the invocation. So.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Why don't we stand, bow our heads for an invocation?
All right. Heavenly Father, pour forth your grace upon the members of this county board so that they may deliberate with the wisdom and understanding necessary to successfully address the challenges and concerns that they will consider this evening. May the actions of this county board safeguard and further the common good of Richland County. We ask you to bless our county and our neighboring counties in southwest Wisconsin as well. May we experience favorable weather so that the spring planting will be successful and that a productive growing season happens in the coming months. We ask in a particular way, Heavenly Father, that you bless our county, our state, and our nation with harmony and peace, preserving us from the dangers of all forms of factionalism and extremism. And we ask this through your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Monsignor Shekel.
You're welcome.
Mr. Clerk, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you'd please refer to your agendas, and I know, Gary, you don't have one to look at. We'll try to get one too, Gary Manning. Right now we have a 19-point agenda. And Mr. Turk, could you read that agenda for us, please?
Certainly. Tonight's agenda items are roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, approve agenda, approve minutes of March meeting, ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Sierra Corp in the town of Aiken, ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Ron and Mark Ewing in the town of Richland, report on petitions for zoning amendments received since the last county board session, report on rezoning petitions recommended for denial by the Zoning and Land Information Committee, resolution recognizing long-serving municipal elected officials, Resolution authorizing the County Parks Commission to contract with Mike's Mowing to mow county parks. Resolution approving the Sheriff's Department's purchase of 2 new vehicles and the purchase and installation of appropriate equipment for those vehicles. Resolution repealing Resolution number 19-49, approving listing for sale and selling county-owned tax parcel number 022-3522-2000, located in the town of Richland, adopted May 21st, 2019. Resolution reducing the county clerk's salary for the 2025-2028 term, correct?
Yes.
That isn't an added agenda item. Appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees. County clerk, board appointment of elected position pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 17.21. Reports, strategic planning, Tri-County Airport Improvements Planning, Administrator's Report, correspondence, and adjournment.
You've heard the agenda. What is your pleasure? Mr. McKee, I have a motion by Mr. McKee, seconded by Don Seep. All those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. We have an agenda. The minutes of the March meeting were also circulated. Have you had a chance to read those? Does anyone have any changes and/or amendments to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve those minutes? Mr. Cosgrove, seconded by Mr. Manning. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We have the minutes approved of the prior meeting. We will take chairman license with our order here tonight. And one of the things that we want to talk about, and a lot of you are involved in this, is the strategic planning that we've been doing with Troy Magid of the Southwest Regional Planning Commission. And he's been leading us through that process. We had a series of meetings, and he is here to report with the final report. And I'm going to call on him at this time to really start us off on the right rah-rah kind of meeting that we want to have here.
All right. Hey, thank you for your time on your agenda tonight. What I'm about to share with you is kind of an overview of the strategic plan in its current form. You'll get this hopefully end of day tomorrow. It's pretty well buttoned up, but I wanted to spend some time walking you through what you're going to see before you receive it. So I appreciate the time on your agenda. Go ahead, Clint. Thank you. So the slides I have set up really outline the plan. We start off looking at some of the key opportunities and challenges that I think frame a lot of the work you'll be doing as I've heard it. Just a brief background on what's informed this, just so you know I'm not sitting in my office thinking things up. We did have 4 meetings, 4 2-hour meetings. Many of you were there, and I very much appreciate your time. We covered core values, stakeholders, vision and mission conversations. You're going to see this outline is more heavily geared towards mission than vision. You're the arm of the state, and there's also a lot of, I think, core challenges you're going to face. So you'll notice that. Oh, go back up if you would. Sorry. We did some SWOT analysis, goals and objectives, and capital improvements and implementation, and so that's kind of how the plan is laid out. There's a couple of documents that I'm going to stick in an appendix that I spent some time on as well that give me some background information, and I'll reference them. And then we also did some stakeholder interviews and tours. Your chief deputy was very generous with his time, showed me around the jail and shared some information. That was much appreciated. So, critical challenges. As you all know, almost everything you do or everything you do is grounded in tax base, which is paid for by people, right? That's the core challenge of rural America, period. So stagnating population growth informs so much of the focus that I think you all will have in the future, as well as a lot of our municipalities. A couple of points of information that I drew on. One is your Moody's Analytics report. As you guys know, in 2018, you had your general obligation bond rating downgraded. And one of the citations in there was further downgrading could be caused by a deterioration, or rather further deterioration of your property tax base and your population. That's a pretty clear marker in the water. The other one is data we collect, if you could, Clint. So here you'll see general population data. Over here in the population projection, it looks like it's climbing a little bit, but if you'll go to the next slide, Clint, what we see really is population growth driven by folks over 65. And the next slide, and Jason Glassbrenner and I speak frequently about this. This is your projected population of workforce. You can see really a reverse trend of those 20 to 64. You can go further down the line. This map, you don't need to see it in detail. Each of these little blobs is a school district. The darker the red is, the greater the decline in enrollment in the last 20 years. So pretty significant, particularly here at home. Clint, the next slide. This is 20 years of enrollment at Richland Local School District. Again, probably nothing surprising until you see it on a graph. It's kind of jumps out at you. These are future taxpayers, right? So I already failed. Marty asked me to give you a rah-rah, but I think it's a phenomenal opportunity here. So that really, in all honesty, I wouldn't be doing you justice if I didn't point out the fact that there's some great challenges and opportunities here. Other challenges, I mentioned the population growth, levy and debt limits. And you're fairly familiar with this. I think you've got a geo bonding limit of about 5% equalized value. You've got levy limits tied to net new construction. So one more slide, Clint. This is essentially your levy limit growth in the last 8 years. It capped out about 1.12%. It's been about 8% or 0.8%, 0.9% over here, around 1%. So we all know our healthcare premiums go up more than 1% a year, as does generally the other inputs to county business. So there's a lot of construction here in terms of growth for the county. So again, that kind of frames a lot of the opportunities in the future. Thanks, Clint. The last thing we'll speak about is deferred maintenance, both in inherited discretionary services and mandatory services, and I'll go into depth on each of those. Obviously, that impacts bonding, and then the debt service itself rolls into your levy limits. So those are impacts. One thing I noticed last year, and I see it in almost every community I work with, we work with 5 counties and I don't know, 40 to 50 municipalities. We always complain and are concerned about a balanced budget, or about inability to meet salary, or about inability to finance capital improvements. I believe I came away in Richland County with the belief that these are symptoms of a larger problem, a larger challenge that I'll speak to. There was the demographic issue, but then perhaps also the need to choose what you're going to do as a county, what services you offer, and what business you're in, which is the question, what's the business of the county? As I come up with it, you're in 5 different businesses. You're in government, and these are the capital assets associated with each. You've got the jail, towers, emergency services, for instance. You're in the business of aviation at the Tri-County Airport. You're in the recreation business with Simons. You're in the education business with the UW campus, and you're in healthcare with Pine Valley. So about as diversified a portfolio as I've seen at a county, certainly of your size. So to philosophize a bit, or to operationalize my philosophy of strategy, I think what folks who work in this field will often say is that strategy is about choosing, making choices so you can succeed. We all know the term, you can't be everything to everybody. So the essence of strategy is sometimes choosing what not to do, choosing where to focus and prioritize limited resources. So the other driving factors that influence the work, and I think a lot of the conversations we've had, is a belief that our practices really need to be tethered to our principles. Those of you who joined me on the Zoom call, we spent a fair amount of time talking about core values. I needed to get a sense of who you were and why you're sitting in these chairs instead of at home. And I heard wonderful things, really, really wonderful things. There's motivated people here who are driven for public service. You're going to succeed. That's good. So the practices you're going to engage in the future have to be tied to that. The other thing is aligning our aspirations, which are infinite, with our capabilities, which are inherently finite. Whatever we want to do, we have to be able to do it. And I won't rehash it, but we did go through an exercise called the Balanced Scorecard. Effectively, what it does is it looks at your personnel, your finances, your human resource capacity, and then the work you want to do, the services. There's got to be a balance among those things. So after all that, the conversations with you and the visits and some of the documents I read, there's really 4 strategic priorities coming down the pipeline over the next 3 years, probably further down the future, but to go further than 3 years out at this point in time is a little rough. One is operational effectiveness, efficiencies. One is economic growth. Focusing and choosing the services, the enterprises you'll be engaged with, that you'll fund. And then continual improvement. And I'll spend some time on that at the end. This shouldn't be a one and done gig. So any questions on that real quick? Aside from not being necessarily the rah-rah thing, but it's a phenomenal opportunity. Okay, yes, sir.
Troy, is that population decline, where do we fall with our neighboring counties? Or is it a problem that's unique to us?
Nope. No, rural America has been kind of declining. I don't have to tell you that. There's youth out migration. Urban centers grow. You know the stuff. It's been, I think, further enhanced. We'll see the data here, the 2020 census, and then afterwards. We know that in times of economic turmoil, birth rates go down. So we have 9/11, we have the 2008 recession, we've got COVID. That's going to hit the country really hard over the next 20 years. Specific to this, we're doing some comprehensive planning in Richland Center, and we've been having a lot of conversations around the school enrollment decline. And that's probably a bigger conversation than here, maybe not appropriate, but Richland Center school enrollment and also the open enrollment out of that district is worth a conversation to somebody. Yeah. So overall, though, no, we see that in a lot of communities. There are communities like Darlington that lost significantly in 20 years. Over the last 10 years, they've almost boomeranged back. And that's a Hispanic population that's moved in. That school district's 30 to 35% Hispanic, something like that. So some communities are bouncing back. Yeah.
Roy,
Yes, sir.
I think you said that we have discretionary and mandatory options or choices. We don't have that many discretionary choices, do we?
Can I return to that in a
Yes.
few minutes?
Thank you.
Yep. So the first chapter we get into is operational improvements. And I'm piggybacking on all of you. You all made probably the two biggest investments in personnel a county can make in creating a county administrator and creating an economic development director. You intentionally made the decision to be more effective and to grow your community, and that's huge. So I'm just piggybacking and giving Clint a lot of work. Mr. Administrator Langberg, a lot of work. Some of this stuff I piggybacked off of. I pulled in the work that you did last August. I had a copy of that information. So I'll glaze over some of this. Centralizing countywide practices and processes. Enhancing coordination, city and town, county. I go into that in a little more detail in the plan. I think also potentially institutional coordination, city, county, school district, and hospital. I think those 4 large entities in a city as small as Richland Center should be coordinated. You are very limited on land, and I'll speak to that a little more later. Other organizational structure improvements, increasing capacity. I loved hearing the fact that on the Zoom calls, the board wants more education and they know what they want, whether it's on finance, debt service, bonding. So I kind of lay out a plan of onboarding, mentoring, these kind of things I think would huge. Once conferences are back, the Wisconsin Counties Association has great resources. So increasing capacity and also staff training. Our county board staff know their department stuff very, very well. Oftentimes I work with them and they haven't had deep training in management or human resources. So to take them to that next deeper level of managerial training could be a benefit. Financial practices, we'll move into a little bit. It's probably worth looking at your, what I call your discretionary and variable revenues, your fees. What do you charge for fees? Maybe making that as a metric for increasing. You've got great reports from Moody's. There's some things you can act on in there, some things that you're a little more bound to. They really didn't like the fact you run a nursing home. Maybe there's a way to figure out what to do about that, but that's their job. You made an intentional decision to care for your people. I wouldn't back away from that, but Moody's looks at it a different way. Improving your budget process, that came up a couple times. So I make a couple recommendations. I'm a big fan of what they call a budget narrative. A half sheet from every department head in the county that says, here's what we're doing, here's what we want our money for, here's how it aligns with the strategic plan and what we're doing with that. And just like you were forced to do, I think, the last budget cycle, here's what we would do with 20% less money, but also here's what we'll give you for 20% more money. It causes folks to think really critically about their budget and how they're spending their time. And then I talked a little bit about analyzing, developing an indirect rate. There's a lot to go into here. We talked about it in the Zoom meetings a little bit. It's a great way to get more money out of your grants. It's also a great way to measure your efficiency of your operations. I can always have a side conversation about that, but it'll be in the plan. So county workforce is something that I hear a lot of counties is wrestling with, but not doing much about. The Iowa County Administrator once told me that 50% of the county workforce is eligible for retirement. So if I were hearing that, I'd have alarm bells ringing. That's phenomenal institutional knowledge going out the door. So a couple recommendations in thinking about your workforce. Well, it's all grounded, if you know Peter Drucker. Again, I'm being a bit of a nerd here, but he really developed the concept of a knowledge worker. All of your county employees are as effective as they are knowledgeable. We don't work on machines. They excel based on their expertise, their knowledge of their work. When you look at all your employees as knowledge workers, of folks who excel with the intelligence they have, it becomes imperative to train them, to educate them, to transfer their knowledge, and to retain those who are knowledgeable, right? So grounded in that thinking, Clint, if you would, sir. Looking at workforce retention and attraction. The county board was very supportive of your staff. You all have told me this. They're dedicated, they care, they do their job well. Reward them. I know you're making strides to getting the pay up where you want it to be. And then there's the other stuff, policies. The policies aren't flashy, but they let an employee know where they stand. They can really build in the fact that you care about them. Something that seemed to be missing was evaluations. Annual evaluations at a minimum. I like to do 6-month check-ins, and then always exit interviews. If you want to manage your turnover, you got to know why folks are going. And I didn't get the sense this was happening uniformly, and I think it's really, really critical. Culture. I want to quote Mr. Turk on our Zoom call, so you all know I put it in the quote. He said, "We want to increase the desirability of being a Richland County employee," which is the kind of place I want to work for. I want to hear my boss say that. So that's super cool. There's different ways to implement that. Small amount of money at each department for retreats. Get them out, let them team build on the Pine River, whatever that is. Let them build a team and love coming to work every day. There's 1,000 ways to do that. And then prioritizing services when evaluating staff needs. We oftentimes say, well, we lost this position, I need that position. I would recommend that every time you have a turnover, you look at the services that are delivered in lieu of the position. So I follow Manpower Group, if you would. Manpower is a kind of a global consulting firm about staffing. I'm a very small organization, but this is what I do as well. There's 5 ways to bridge workforce and talent needs. You can build it, meaning giving folks training. If you have a need in the community, or a need in your organization, you can train and educate folks to get in there. You can buy the workforce you need. That's put a position description together and hire, go to market. You can borrow. Jason Glassbrenner is an example. I'm an example. We're consulting, you're contracting, you're collaborating for staff services. And then you can bridge it, and this is the intentional succession planning piece. Okay, department head XYZ is retiring. This person's interested in that job. Let's get them the training so they succeed at the job and we can retain people. Bridging them to build an anticipated need. And then you can evaluate if you can stop providing the service. It doesn't come up that much, but it can come up. Maybe the service isn't needed anymore. So that was all workforce related. I think being knowledge workers and the percentage of your budget that is grounded in personnel requires that you consider that. So the last bit of the operational strategy is economic growth. And I think Jason's the lead on this, Glassbrenner. Land, labor, and capital, he's doing this quite well. I don't know to belabor it. He's identifying parcels and land. He's evaluating incentives for businesses. He's got workforce and attraction opportunities. Parks, Rec, Tourism, I do want to kind of agitate for 2 things. One, you really need a website. And here's why. If you would, Clint. This is a landing page of Lafayette County. The next slide is the landing page of Salt County. You know what's coming, right? The next page is the digitized Word document that is Richland County. This is the front door to the whole entire world. And it's really, really important this thing brings folks home. I know it can be daunting, it can be scary, but you've got a whole cohort of counties out there who you can learn from in terms of best practices. I think that's a really critical investment. And then the other one is identity, and this maybe is, we're having these conversations with municipalities, but I think the county should be involved. Understanding who Richland County is, being distinct is what attracts people. And if you want to attract workforce and you want to attract families, you need to be a place that folks recognize as being where they want to be. And to do that, you need an identity. Clint, if you would, sir. We agitated a little bit in Richland Center. Here's 8 different logos for the city of Richland Center. We're doing some planning work there, and we asked them who they are, and they have 8 different logos. So again, this is something that Jason can partner with the cities, but I think it's really important to be a place that is recognized if you're going to attract folks. Any questions on the operational stuff? I think some of that you have been moving towards, some of it might have been new.
You spoke of bridging. Were you talking about cross-training?
Succession planning, yeah. So
Okay.
you've got either a transfer lateral position in the department or moving up the ladder as folks retire. So bridging that gap of that impending departure, yeah.
Did not recognize earlier, RL something when you're earlier in the slide?
RLF, Revolving Loan Fund. It's a gap financing tool. Yeah, sorry. So this is where the fun starts. Your capital improvements. Just the background, as I was listening to you and meeting with folks, I had to frame how to capture all that I was hearing. And so in making recommendations, this is the analysis that I went through for mandatory services. I tried to identify the risk of not investing in these services or facilities. I got as close as I could to an estimated cost at this point in time. And I tried to identify the proximate objective. This is the one piece of jargon that I'm using. It's a strategy term, and it means what it means. We all know that term, how to eat the elephant. These things that I'm going to go over will not be solved next year. But you can't wait to act until you know the full picture. So when I use the term proximate objective, it's the next thing that you can accomplish and move the ball forward. There's got to be forward momentum. So I tried to identify that proximate objective. For discretionary services, I identified what I thought I heard were your goals. I identified some constraints and something else that's behind this.
Constraints and considerations
Yeah,
and
consideration.
proximate objective again.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So there's probably more mandated services. I didn't even get into the horizontal construction, the culverts, the bridges, and the roads. That stuff shows up annually, and it's always in the budget. The big ticket physical facilities that were discussed was the emergency services building, which I believe is a joint venture with the city. These, the 9/11 towers, the emergency response towers, and the salt and the sand shed. And I won't spend too much time on those. They all seem to be fairly well underway in one form or another. And the jail and the sheriff's office is the one that I guess I'll speak to tonight if I could. So probably, I'm sure you know this, it's out of compliance with the Department of Corrections Administrative Code. It's been so for a spell. Your chief deputy said they're managing. That's what they do. They're law enforcement. They're managing, and they're dealing with it well. But as I see it, you have really two options. There's only two things you can do. If you renovate or expand, well, the upside is you don't need to find any new land. You had a study done in 2013 that was pretty exhaustive. The estimated cost for the whole courthouse at that point was about $12.8 million in 2013 dollars, with a $6.24 million price tag for just the jail. It didn't take into consideration things you'll run into in what we call an occupied remodel. You've got to find a place for the prisoners to go, or the inmates, so excuse me, whatever you call them. You got to find a place for the sheriff to work. You've got to transport them. All of those operational costs will add up, and there wasn't anything identified there. So that's an unknown. The other option, of course, is to build new. There may be some opportunities to collaborate. There's not been any planning done yet that I have seen or heard from. Estimated cost, based on Iowa and Grant County, ballpark, $20 million if you have to buy land. Don't hold me to that, but don't plan for less. And then you got to find land. Iowa County's facility was just under 30 million, 73,000 square feet, and it sits on 9 acres. So a little bigger county, but finding that acreage will be a challenge. As you know, there's other demands on your land in the county, and that'll really put you in competition. The other thing on there is the opportunity or challenge. If you build new, you have this giant space in the courthouse that you have to figure out what to do with. So if you would go back up once, Clint, my recommendation in 3 years now, across the next 3 years, to the best you can, this is your, what I call your proximate objective. This decision is huge. You've got school referendums that will change the landscape. You've got a guy out there looking to find businesses and develop housing. You've got the hospital in 5 or 10 or 8 years. I don't know that timeline, but I'm not from here and I've heard conversations. So there's lots of demand on land. And they're all in competition with you, unless you're having conversations. So over the next couple of years, that's the key is figuring out which of these you're going to do. You don't have to build a thing. You should work hard to figure out which path you're taking. And then there's the discretionary services that I've identified. Pine Valley, Tri-County Airport, Simon Center, and UW Richland. I think I have a little bit of each in here. Let's see, did we miss one? Oh, wait, okay, so for all of these, sorry, thanks. What I heard and what I've seen, where you are currently with these, your biggest priority should be service, focusing on the county needs and the county finances. You've got some big mandated services out there that are going to cost a pile of money. You need to protect those assets that you own. Whatever you do with them in the future, you want them to be in good shape. I'll speak a little more about that. I know that you have at least one facility who is the occupant is giving you a capital improvements list. If the future's uncertain, minimize your investment in capital improvements until you know for sure what you're doing. And then focus. Candidly, it's a challenge, but there needs to be a focus on reducing your long-term liabilities, your capital improvements expenditures down the road. So for each of those, just a couple of notes. Pine Valley, again, you invested in it in what, 2015 or so. It works well. That was an intentional investment. The only thing that I heard is that perhaps it's not fully paying for itself. I think the revenue is paying for expenditures, but maybe not debt service.
That's correct. We use general funds,
Yep.
general levy for debt service.
But that's the way it was set up.
Sure. Again, something to evaluate to see if it's feasible. And then, of course, always watching future demand. We know the demographics. I have heard repeatedly a wonderful thing said about the administrator out there, and I'm sure that they're on top of it. Figuring out what you need down the road. And of course, the reason Moody's doesn't really like this is that it's tied to federal funding. A big reason is that it's tied to federal funding for reimbursement. And one person comes in or one legislator goes out, the federal funding formula can change. So they're not taking a moral position on caring for people in Pine Valley. They're simply saying, from a financial standpoint, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of operating that facility. Tri-County Airport, again, there seemed to be pretty good support. The partnership is there. There was support on their Zoom calls for the partnership. And candidly, my opinion is the investment is a good chunk of money over the next couple of years, but relative to the economic impact, not that severe, particularly when the partnership with Sauk County carries the large portion of that. I didn't really hear any strong or mild sentiment to getting out of this. Pursuing the flood remediation is huge. Airports are a huge asset for economic development, a really, really big asset. So that would be the recommendation there. Simon Center is harder to discuss. Certainly a well-loved institution. Folks appreciate it. It's very cheap, that is to say inexpensive, probably potentially because there's some subsidization there from what we've heard. You all own it. The question might be is, should the county, if this is a successful venture, should the county be in the recreation business? So I think that's a hard question to be asking in the future. One of the things that came up when we were talking about your mission is that you want to be in these sort of discretionary, non-mandatory places when there's a clear need and when the private sector will not cover the work, when the private sector won't take care of it. So at the very least, if that's your position, you should be asking the question and analyzing if this can exist without county subsidies. The operational funding isn't much. There's some 50,000 for lockers or something, but there's also been conversation about an addition, which would be fundraised. These are the things that I hear. You can correct me. So that's wonderful that they would fundraise and build that, but then there's a long-term liability there on your asset, right? So those are the things to consider down the road. And then there's the campus, another beloved institution. Every single person I spoke to would love to go back 40 years. This was a very robust, locally controlled institution. Not many people saw it as such currently today, or potentially being that way in the future. So a couple of goals here: improving the county's position relative to its conversations with UW-Platteville. Because of who I work with and the conversations I'm in, those conversations with the UW system feel like they're more one-sided. There's a culture there of deference, or there's the elephant in the room of the campus. But keeping in mind that this is your asset, belongs to the people of the county. This is your facility. You're a co-partner in that lease. I think you're doing well protecting it. I know there's a $3.9 million capital improvements plan. Is that the number? Across 10 years. It's good, the investment in a roof. Every building, everywhere, forever needs a roof. Some of the stuff that I saw in there were putting in water bottle refillers in the drinking fountain. Potentially a very good investment, but if it's going to be something different, you don't want to mobilize a plumber now to put in drinking fountains only to have the use change and remobilize your plumber to tear it out again. So that's the sort of thinking as you look at that capital improvements plan that's important. That ties into the reducing expenditures. So as I read the lease, and I'm going to put the lease, I was able to get a hold of it and read through it. It's a 50-some-year document, granted, and it's hard to say what other agreements or practices have been in place. But I recommend it'll be in the appendix. You read the lease so you can start thinking about questions to ask. It extends to,
6/30/2042.
yeah, that's the sunset of the lease, right? There is the option to terminate for cause. Cause being essentially that the funding on the University Board of Regents side is not sufficient to pay for a 2-year college. So, again, as the layman reading this, that's the stipulation. After termination, it really stipulates that it should be used for education or government. And then there's other considerations. These aren't things that will guide your decision, but should be included. Currently, I think the utilities are paid by the Board of Regents. Janitorial services split. Those will bump up your operational costs if the agreement changes. And then all the furnishings apparently were provided by UW, so they probably won't take them with them. Those 3 things there are considerations. They're not deal breakers, but so my recommendation to you, agitate to get this information. You owe it to the taxpayers in the county to know what's going to be in that building. If the Board of Regents and UW-Platteville value that facility and want to continue investing in it, they're going to have an enrollment strategy that's going to include a recruiting strategy that's going to include target populations, right? This is nothing more than a value proposition. What services will they offer to which populations at what cost? That's a value proposition. And if they don't have that, they're not considering being there for a long time. Distinct areas of study, housing, these are the things that they should have if they're serious about a long-term investment. Push and agitate and get that while developing alternative scenarios for your facility. Figure out what else can go in there. And I know there's a gentleman who's thinking about this extensively. A lot of folks, candidly. Those are great buildings, and they're your assets. So this is also backed up, if you're following the news, the couple things on the radar. The president, Tommy Thompson, is that his position? Has been pretty vocal recently in his state of the colleges, but also in his own position about looking critically at the 2-year colleges and the tech colleges. The redundancies, the complementarities in some fashion there. The other thing that's floating around out there is legislation that has pretty broad support from at least a couple of our local legislators that would enable technical colleges to offer associate's degrees without approval from the Board of Regents. So there's concern about competition and this regional group of economic developers. We spent a fair amount of time talking about it, but that's floating around out there. There's been concern that'll impact enrollment at the 2-year colleges. I think your enrollment issues were pre-existing. So again, I can't solve this for you, but I'm here to advise you on how to really agitate and improve your position for your asset, for your people. I think that's really critical. Yeah, again, I'm a nerd, right? At this point, management is doing the right thing. Leadership is doing, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right thing. It's awful and difficult and uncomfortable, but important. So the last piece is continual improvement. It's easy to plan and then walk away or put it on a shelf, heaven forbid. I know that, I'm a planner. Just the last slide I would share is this came out awful small. I do outline a way to move this thing forward continuously. The PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act process of continual improvement. We're wrapping up the planning. The doing portion is rolling it out to departments, finding the resources, identifying the team leaders, all of that good stuff, and executing the projects, particularly the countywide stuff. The study portion, you should have a management team that pushes this forward. I recommend meeting quarterly an interdisciplinary team of folks who look at this, who move it forward. You don't have to spend hours managing it, but if you're not getting together quarterly and seeing what's happening, it's going to sit on the shelf. It'll fall by the wayside. You also, during the study period, need to figure out what the barriers are. You're going to find some things you want to do that don't work. You need to document and figure out why. And then acting, as you learn about what you're doing, you adopt the strategy, you adapt it to make it work, or you abandon it. It's just not good for you. And then you start the next 3-year cycle. My last slide, just so you're aware of this stuff, I'm going to have a couple of appendices. I think I need to check with Administrator Langrick on one document, but what I'm going to put in there is very simple. It's an implementation matrix. Is there a slide? There you go. You can skip ahead if you would. You don't want to read the plan every single day, so I'm going to give you a cheat sheet. Management by spreadsheet. Something in there like project, objective, timeline, who's going to do it. This is what you bring quarterly. You check it off, you mark it up, you go forward. Other appendices that I'll drop in. I mentioned the Moody's rating. That's really important, particularly for folks who want financial education. Your county courthouse, I think we could potentially put the cost in there. There was concern about the whole plan because it lays out the jail system. So we'd want to take caution there. And then I think the Board of Regents lease and the 10-year capital projects. Now I can be vetoed on any of this stuff, but I think that's all really good educational stuff to chew on as you move forward. So I took a bunch of your time and I appreciate that. But this is what you'll see. We're going to get the plan out to you, send it through your administrator. I got to button up a few things, but look to have it hopefully by tomorrow. And then hopefully you all have my email or phone call now. I guess I'll defer to Marty and, Chairman Brewer and Administrator Langrick if you want folks to go through you or direct. However, but I think there's a feedback period here to get some input.
I'm comfortable with you folks reaching directly out to Troy. This is essentially our plan, but it is your decision and your 21 votes that are going to carry on implementing it. So I'd love if you want to CC me on it an email just so I kind of understand the discussion points, but I'm comfortable with it provided Chair Brewer shares, if he doesn't share a different opinion.
No, I think this is great, and I think a lot of people, I'm sure, had their eyes open here. Things you didn't even know. You know, we don't know what we don't know, and there's a lot of information here that is very important going forward. Thank you, Troy. Appreciate it.
I would just say, since I started off wrong, that I want to end right. We're doing some comprehensive planning with Lone Rock, Richland Center. There's a lot of really good feeling about what you all are doing. Administrator Langrick, Director Glassbrenner are wildly supported. And so while this is challenging, good people are doing good things, and I think there's a lot of good opportunities. So anyhow, I appreciate your time. Thank you all.
Thank you. And Mr. Langrick, since we're down on number 17, and the Tri-County Airport was mentioned by Troy, and I'm sure a lot of folks on our board really aren't aware of what's happening there and problems and the opportunities. And we did have a report that we were going to have tonight, but unfortunately, both Steve and Mike, Steve Williamson and Dan McGuire, aren't here. Are you able to speak on this?
Mr. Chair, I can speak to it. I can kind of give you maybe a very brief gist of it. It is not in my position right now to cheerlead as this being a project out in front of other projects. I've been asked by finance and personnel to kind of bring all the capital improvement capital projects to their body for discussion underneath a recommendation. However, this project here does incorporate fundings and opportunities that we have to take action on yet this year. So it's not simply just isolated to a decision process for this next year. So in very brief strokes, the Tri-County Airport Improvement Project, what is the project and what service does it support? It's our Tri-County Airport located by Lone Rock. It services flyers for a couple different businesses that fly in and out of there, as well as private planes. Major problem with it, as many of you know, is that if gets any type of couple inches of water, it can equate to a couple feet of water across the airport. It is in the lower part of the catch basin of its floodplain, and everything funnels that way, as well as there is increased water, groundwater, which has raised the water table, so the water doesn't have anywhere to go. The main gist of the project is to build in a trenching system and a improved ditch all the way to the Bear Creek, which is a little over a mile away, I believe. Why is it needed? Again, the airport is flooded with a small bit of water. It accumulates quickly. The projects that look like we can potentially maneuver on next year is about a $9.5 million project, of which the FAA, the federal government, would pick up 90%. The state would pick up 5%, leaving a 5% local share. If we can maneuver on it and have our pieces in place, we can apply application for that grant to do the work next year. If we miss that window of opportunity, then as we hit 2025, there's some huge projects in Mitchell and Dane Airport that are going to probably take up most of the FAA funds coming towards Wisconsin. What are the risks and consequences of going without, deferring to a later year? The period of flooding impacts our hangars and our tenants that are leasing our hangars. We've had one piece of litigation, a demand for arbitration on one of our lease agreements that the Sauk County Corporation Council is currently working through. So there are consequences with having an airport that resembles a lake on occasion. Additional comments, again, it's a $9.5 million project. The financial breakdown in very broad strokes is kind of up here of a $9.55 million estimated if we remain in the same type of a contract or an ordinance with Sauk County of them having a 75% share and us a 25% share for the 2022 year. That would leave Sauk County with about $358,000 of that local share, Richland County with $119,000 share. Part of the project, in order for the FAA to be able to cover all of it, would require, though, that we together, the two counties, acquire the land to put in the irrigation ditch running all the way from the airport to the creek. So it's an estimated about potentially $100,000 to buy that land so that it is then part of the airport so that FAA dollars can cover the improvements on that. So that would be a $76,000 approximately for Sauk, $25,000 for us. Now we do have an opportunity. There's a local area partner that is willing to give a substantial donation that would cover over our expenses for land acquisition as anticipated for this year, which means we wouldn't have to do budget adjustments. Sauk County would not have to do budget adjustments. But in order for them to put their money down first, it would be proper for both counties to be in agreement that we're going to honor and pick up 2022 costs and have a commitment from both bodies in moving the project forward. The timeline on executing this is we're looking to have a revised owner agreement and ordinance. And again, this is still coming from the beginning of this year with Iowa County pulling out. Our Tri-County airport will remain named Tri-County, but it's in fact a bi-county airport. But in that ordinance agreement, both counties would be agreeing on what that share is. As negotiated through Chair Brewer, Richland County maintained a 25% share, and Sauk County picked up a 75% share of it moving into this year. Other things then by May 2020, looking for commitment from both bodies then to say, yes, if we move forward with this grant application, we're committed to pick up the expenses going forward into 2022. Our land acquisition or a indefinite lease needs to be completed throughout the summer and prior to the application process. There's many necessary land reports of environmental hazmat, archaeology study, a couple other different studies that all have to be completed as well and in place by September. Different partners that we're working on this project with include Jewel and Sauk County. We also have folks with Westwood and then several other partners that are at the table and trying to make this project happen. So again, this is the layout of it. I'm sure that Supervisor McGuire and Supervisor Williamson will be approaching you folks in the next couple meetings again to advocate more on behalf of it, on the goodness and the pros and cons of it. But as this might be coming to you to make decisions on already in May, appropriate that you have a gist of what's happening so that you can ask questions and get yourself more educated, leading potentially to a vote in May. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Langrick. So it's a big project, but at one time, when we looked at it, it was $9 million and our share would have been in the millions. But since that time, the FAA has stepped in and various leveraged, I call it leveraged schemes have been put together. So it isn't going to be that bad. So the real decision here is, do we need it? Does it contribute to the economic growth of the county? Those are things you have to ask yourself and ask those involved in the project. I will admit that early on I was in the camp that said, let's walk away. It's not worth it. But then I realized what an economic impact, just the salaries, for instance, of the folks who live in Richland County who work at Cardinal amount to $19 million annually. Now that $19 million, I'm sure not all of it is being spent in the county, but I'll bet a lot of it is. I mean, they're homeowners, landowners in the county, so they pay taxes. So things to think about. Mr. Seep, did you have a comment? Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Chair, has there been, do we have data, analytical data in terms of return on investment yet, or is that in the works?
Well, I would say it's in the works. That's a real difficult thing to compute, but.
I understand that.
Yep. Okay, we probably exhausted that. Administrator Langrick, did you have anything? Do you want to save then your other comments till the end of our agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, then why don't we move then, as we promised Mike at last meeting, we'd move him up to be the first thing on the agenda. And of course, we already didn't quite follow through on that, but we're there. Number 6. An ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to this, is it Sierra Corporation in the town of Aiken. Mr. Turk, could you read that ordinance, please?
I don't have a number to assign to it, but this is to rezone a 5.88 acre parcel in the town of Aiken from the General Agricultural and Forestry District. This will be ordinance 21-8. 21-8. Rezoning that parcel from General Agriculture and Forestry, AF, to the Ag and Residential, AR District. And this ordinance is offered by the Zoning and Land Information Committee. Supervisors Cooley, Williamson, Cosgrove, Gentis, and Glassbrenner all signing in favor.
You've heard the ordinance. What's your pleasure? Supervisor Cosgrove, 4, seconded by Luck. Background?
The background on this parcel is that Sierra's owns like around 700 acres. They bought some adjoining land and they want to split out the house in a few acres. Therefore, it needs to be rezoned. Town approved.
Thank you. Any questions? And the town has approved this, I think, right? All right. All those in favor of the ordinance signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ordinance is carried. Thank you. Number 7, an ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Ron and Mark Ewing in the town of Richland. Mr. Turk.
This will be ordinance 21-9, rezoning a 3.68 acre parcel belonging to Ron and Mary Ewing in the town of Richland from the General Agricultural and Forestry District, AF, to the single family residential R2 district. This is offered by the Zoning and Land Information Committee. Supervisors Cooley, Williamson, Cosgrove, Gentis, and Glassbrenner all signing in favor.
What are your wishes? Mrs. Glassbrenner and that guy there.
Richard McKee.
Mr. McKee seconds the motion. Background, please.
Just to clarify for the record, it is Mary and not Mark that's on the agenda.
Excuse me, Ron and Mary Ewing.
Anyways, they own about 167 acres. They have 2 residents. They want to split one off and create a separate lot for it.
Okay,
Town approved.
the town approves, so all those in favor of the ordinance signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the ordinance carries. Number 8. Petitions for zoning amendments received since the last county board session. Do we have any?
There's a petition by Frank and Kathy Wanick to rezone 2.14 acres from Ag Forestry to Residential 2, Section 34, Town of Richwood. There's a petition by Denver and Roberta Kaufman to rezone 20 acres from Ag Forestry to Ag Residential, Section 28, Town of Orion. And there's a petition by Rodney Sussex to rezone 33 acres from Ag Forestry to Ag Residential, Section 34, Town of Willow.
It sounds pretty busy. Things are heating up, I think. All right, and are there any?
None.
Oh, all right, recommended for, all right, denial. Thank you, Mike. The next thing on the agenda is a resolution recognizing long-serving municipal elected officials. Mr. Turk.
This will be resolution 21-53. And there is a listing of 22 municipal elected officials that have served 20 or more years. And now therefore be it resolved, the county board expresses its appreciation to each of these current and former elected officials for their many years of dedicated service to the residents of Richland County. And be it further resolved, the county board appreciates the contributions of all municipal elected officials, no matter the length of their service. And be it further resolved, if an error is found in the above list, or if an elected official has been erroneously omitted, anyone may contact Sean Murphy Lopez, the chair of the county's Rules and Resolutions Committee, at 608-462-3715 to request a correction. Be it further resolved that the county clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to each of these elected officials at the addresses set forth in the attachment to this resolution. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. The resolution is offered by the Rules and Resolution Committee. Supervisors Murphy Lopez, Cosgrove, Severson, Luck, and Seep all signing in favor.
Do you wish to have a reading of the officials? Yes, no? Mr. Lopez Murphy.
No, I think it's okay. We're having, unless someone else would like them, that's fine, but we're having these go out to, someone else does, yep.
Chairman, I'm sure they're not listening.
Some of the landmarks achieved by these people are amazing. We're looking at 30 years, 25 years, 40 years, I believe there was one. So if you get a chance, please congratulate your chairman, your clerks, your treasurers, and your townships when you go to those meetings. And I'm sure you're all attending your township meetings. I would urge you to do so. All right, you've heard the resolution. What is your pleasure? Mrs. Call, seconded by Mrs. Luck. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I'm sure no one would oppose this. Thank you. The resolution is carried. Number 11, a resolution authorizing the County Parks Commission to contract with Mike's Mowing to mow county parks. Mr. Turk.
To will be Resolution 21-54. And now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the County Parks Commission to sign a contract with Mike's Mowing for $8,400 for 2021. And be it further resolved that the Parks Commission Chair, Carrie Severson, is hereby authorized to sign on behalf of the county the contract. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. The resolution is offered by the County Board Supervisor members of the County Parks Commission, Supervisors Gottschall, Manning, and Severson, all signing in favor.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Strun, Lopez Murphy. Next motion, seconded by Mr. McKee. And do we have some discussion? Looks pretty straightforward. We always get Mike, don't we? Did we accept other bids? Do we look at other bids? Yes.
Mr. Chair,
We did go out for bids, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm sure you did.
We did go out to bids this year, publicize it in our paper. We
Mr. Chairman,
received 3 bids, and Mr. Drake was the low bidder.
Okay. All those in favor of the resolution?
Mr. Chair,
signify by saying
Mr.
aye.
Chairman,
Aye.
Mr.
Opposed?
Chairman, Mr.
Resolution
Chairman, I have a question.
Pardon?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Nelson.
is this $8,400 as a matter how many times they mow these, or if we have a dry year and he mows half as much as he did the next year? Or?
I'll refer that to Mr. Severson. Did you hear the question, Carrie?
Yes, there's a spec sheet that he has to follow. I'm not sure on how many times a year. I believe it's once a week or twice a week, or not, twice a month, something like that. I have to look at the spec sheets for it.
But I suppose in a dry year, he might make out, huh?
The other bidders were considerably a little bit higher than the $8,400, but
So no matter how many times he mows, it's 8,400.
yes.
Mr. Chair, may I comment?
Mr. C, please do.
I'm always happy to respond to Mr. Nelson's intelligent questions. Mr. Nelson, I was on the Parks Commission some years ago, and Mr. Drake, or excuse me, his name Mike, was with us then and has been providing that service for a number of years. We've never had a complaint about his service. He does excellent work. And we may have a dry year on occasion, but you must remember that most of this property is in lowland where the water table is pretty high. Also, he does a lot of other work that is not a part of the contract. He has painted and cleaned up the restrooms at the Rockbridge Park. He's cut down trees and brush that have been in the way, and he's done a lot of extra things. So I think the county is very fortunate to have him, and they're getting a hell of a good buy.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Nelson.
Your comments are respectfully accepted, Mr. C.
Quite welcome. It's always a pleasure.
Gentlemen, please speak to the chair. Okay, we have the motion and the resolution.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Severson.
So, the contract for the mowing specifications would be at Akey School, the rifle range, Rockbridge Park, Viola County Park, and the kayak landings, both Highway 80 and SR. He's to mow the parks once a week as needed in judgment of the contractor or upon request by the county from April 15th to November 1st. And contractor will provide the necessary equipment.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then there's other duties that tasked with that, like picking up garbage and cleaning the bathroom and.
So it's more than mowing. There's some maintenance here.
Yep, the clean the restroom is according to the following schedule would be at least 3 times a week at Pier Park and the rifle range that at least 1 time a week, so.
All right, thank you, thank you. I think I'm ready to vote. How about the rest of you? Okay. All those in favor of ratifying this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We got a mower. A resolution approving the Sheriff's Department purchase of 2 new vehicles and the purchase and installation of appropriate equipment for those vehicles. Number 12, Mr. Turk.
This would be Resolution 21-55. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the Sheriff's Department to spend not more than $130,000 for the purchase of 2 new squad vehicles and appropriate equipment and installation for those vehicles. Be it further resolved that the sheriff is authorized to spend not more than $130,000 to make these purchases, and be it further resolved that authority is hereby granted for the Law Enforcement and Judiciary Committee and the sheriff to sell 2 Ford Interceptor utility squad cars in a manner deemed appropriate by the committee, and for the net sale proceeds to be deposited in the Sheriff's Department's new car outlay account in the 2021 county budget. And be it further resolved, these purchases shall be paid from the 2021 Capital Projects Fund, Fund Number 92, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This resolution offered by the Finance and Personnel Committee, Supervisors Murphy Lopez, Cooey, Brewer, Gentis, Luck, Seep, and Turk, all signing in favor.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Van Landite, and seconded by Ms. Gentis. Chief Porter, you're on the virtual hookup. Can you fill us in?
Yes, similar to last year, we used Capital Improvement Fund to purchase our squad cars and the necessary equipment to equip them. Last year worked out well for us where we kind of had a cap style. We could spend up to this much to complete the project, allowed payments to be made in a timely fashion. I was looking to continue that trend this year with this year's squad purchases and equipment installation.
Okay, thank you, thank you. This was budgeted. I mean, this is not unplanned. This is according to schedule. Mr. Tim Gotchel.
My question is the sale of the existing vehicles, the proceeds of that going back to the new car outlay. Is that by design?
Yeah, we had quite a discussion in finance. Mr. Lopez Murphy, can you remember what the tenor of that discussion was?
Mr. Chair, I do not, because I was absent from
Oh.
that meeting, although I
There
did
you
watch
go.
it a few days ago, just to catch up. I was going to in turn ask a question to the people who were there, because I didn't remember watching it in the video. Did you guys discuss taking the proceeds and putting them into the new car outlay account instead of the general fund?
Chief Porter, I'm going to defer to you for that explanation, please.
That was actually not discussed at the finance meeting. However, it was past practice for many years that proceeds from the sale returned to new car outlay. We have discussed that, I believe, at a prior county board meeting, and that the thought was that it would return to the general fund, but I did, as past practice, put that in the resolution.
Yeah, we're not talking about millions of dollars here, are we?
A few thousand, maybe.
Yeah.
2,000 or 3,000 if we're lucky per squad, depending on how the auction goes.
Mr. Seep?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Chief Porter is correct. In all the years that my people memory can take me back to, this has always been done. They've always put the sale of used vehicles back into the outlay account. Now, it really doesn't make much difference. If you put it into the general fund, you're going to take it out and give it back to them when they need it. So one way or another, it's not a big deal.
We realize that though it's a matter of equity, and I'm thinking of when we sold the rubber mats over at Simon's. The money from that was put in general fund, I believe, or at least it was designed to go there. We may have circumvented that, but
Mr. Chair, if I can comment, if we're not talking on the merits of it, but the mechanics of it, without having stipulated in the resolution, your county board rule number 14, page 7 would say that the proceeds from all sales of surplus county property shall be deposited in the general fund.
Yeah, thank you. But it is, of course, stipulated in the resolution, so. Mr. Gotchel,
I would make an amendment to not stipulate it in the resolution just for equity. I realize it's a low dollar amount, but I would feel a little more comfortable with that.
okay, is it easy to strike that from the resolution? Who's looking at the resolution? I guess I would refer to Julie.
Stand by.
Chair Brewer, this question.
Yes, Mr. Frank.
So the new car outlay, putting that money back into that fund, one is it allows for the vehicles to be sold. And at some point, that's going to have to make sure that that's in the resolution. Otherwise, they do not have authority to sell the vehicles. Secondly, that fund had been used to put equipment in the cars, offsetting the cost of the installation, cost of the vehicle and the installation. And that was the purpose that had been done in previous history. So I guess at that point, I would be concerned about having that removed and then not being able to sell the vehicles. We're going to have to come back to the county board for another resolution to sell the vehicles.
Well, historically, we haven't taken money to purchase the vehicles from the loan account. Historically, all there has been is the new car outlay that we replenished every year through the budget process. So it made sense at that point then to put the money back into the new car outlay, and now maybe it doesn't. Mrs. Luck.
So I'm in agreement with Supervisor Gottschall. We didn't let HHS put the money that they didn't spend on, they had a large sum, and we made them put it back in the general fund instead of it putting back into their, I think it was for placements account. So I think for equity, it would make more sense to me that we strike the language about putting it in the general fund, but leave the language about being able to sell the car.
Okay, is that easily done?
Mr. Chair, can I attempt to make a motion to amend here?
Yes, please do.
We already have a motion to amend on the floor.
Do we?
Yes.
It hasn't.
Yeah, Mr. Gotcha made a motion.
I will withdraw.
But he didn't give us the wording. I think Mr. Lopez Murphy
I'm going to try.
probably has wording for us.
So I would propose in this motion to amend to strike the words, this is in the second, be it further resolved paragraph. The third line, strike the words Sheriff Department's new car outlay account. So that's 6 words, and replace those 6 words with general fund.
Okay, and do I have a second to that? Ms. Gentis. All right, do we need a new reading of that resolution then? Okay, Mr. Turk, are you able to do that?
The amended paragraph would read, be it further resolved that authority is hereby granted for the Law Enforcement and Judiciary Committee and the Sheriff to sell 2 Ford Interceptor utility squad cars in a manner deemed appropriate by the committee, and for the net sale proceeds to be deposited in the general fund in the 2021 county budget. Is that accurate, Supervisor Lopez?
Thank you. All right, let's vote on that amendment then. Essentially, we're saying the money from the sale of proceeds then goes into general fund, not in the new car outlay. All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we have the amended resolution approving purchase of the vehicles and equipping them, etc., but selling the old ones and putting the money in the general fund. And I would say nice try, Chief Porter, and we're ready to vote on the resolution to get you some new cars. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. We're down to number 13, a resolution repealing resolution number 19-49, approving the listing for sale and selling county owned tax parcel, blah, 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 located in the town of Richland, adopted May 21st, 2019. Mr. Turk.
This will be resolution number 2156. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that resolution number 19-49, a resolution approving listing for sale and selling county-owned tax parcel number 022-3522-2000 located in the town of Richland, is hereby repealed, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon its passage and publication. Resolution is offered by the Property, Building, and Grounds Committee. Supervisors McKee, Cosgrove, Caro, McGuire, and Williamson all signing in favor.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Cosgrove, seconded by Mr. Severson. Can somebody explain what we're doing here quickly, easily?
Mr. Chair, Administrator Langrick,
Yes,
the
sir.
parcel 30.5 acres, it's down by the river off of County O. Initially, it was made action and adopted to sell that with net proceeds going towards the debt service fund. Since that action was taken, discussions have had between the Property Buildings Ground Committee, also with the Parks Commission and the Pine Valley Board of Trustees, into repurposing that for a potential kayak landing and recreational area. We've had discussions with adjacent landowners on property swaps, as well as survey type work that is in the works. But in recognizing that we have directive right now, an adoption of a plan to sell that land, it would be up to the county board to kind of relinquish that directive by repealing the resolution. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I remember. Okay. We've heard the resolution. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've repealed one resolution, replaced it with another. And if you need more information on that land swap, Kerry Severson does a great stand-up explanation of that. He came to the Pine Valley meeting, and we had a lengthy discussion. Took me right there. I was standing right with him, hand in hand. Okay. Brings us down to number 14, a resolution reducing the county clerk's salary for the 2025-28 term. Agenda item added. Okay. Do we have that, Mr. Turk?
Yes, we do.
All right.
It will be resolution number 21-57. Now therefore be it resolved, when elected official salaries are set for the 2025-2028 term, the salary of the county clerk shall be reduced to equal the salary of the Register of Deeds and Treasurer. And be it further resolved that this reduction should not be interpreted as a reflection on the performance of the person holding the office of county clerk. And be it further resolved that a memorandum of understanding be developed between the administrator and incoming clerk to detail the extra duties assigned to the clerk for the remainder of the 2021-2024 term. And be it further resolved that this memorandum of understanding be approved by the county board with first review by the Finance and Personnel Committee. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. Resolution is offered by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Supervisors Murphy Lopez, Cooey, Brewer, Gentis, Luck, Seep, and Turk all signing in favor.
Thank you. You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure, Mr. Seep?
I move for approval.
And Mrs. Glassbrenner seconds. Okay, can someone tell us what's going on?
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
make an attempt here? I am sending all the county board members right now background on this item. I just emailed folks. This background was discussed at Friday's Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. I'm going to try to just hit. So several raised a question about the clerk's salary being approximately $79,000 when the Register of Deeds and the treasurer's salaries were lower. And actually, this was also in relation to the idea that the clerk used to do the administrative coordinator duties, and because we've hired Administrator Langrecht, that's no longer necessary. So I did quite a bit of research last week. I looked up our old resolution that we passed in March of 2020, which state law requires us to do that. Or those people, looks like I'm gonna have to get another microphone, I'm sorry.
That's the second microphone you've blown up there, is that Sean?
It is. I'm having a
We're keeping track.
bad luck tonight. Okay. Give this one a try. So, and then I lost my train of thought. March 2020, we had to adopt that. Thank you. We had to adopt that resolution according to state law before those folks took out nomination papers. We already set the salaries for 2021 through 2024. State law does not allow us to reduce the salary of any elected official in the middle of their term. And so because of that, we are stuck with the $79,000 salary for 2021. And then that increases approximately 2.5% every year through 2024 when it will end up at $83,000. So I researched this with the Wisconsin Counties Association attorney, Andrew Phillips. He suggested, given the situation that we were in with our clerk resigning and appointing a new clerk potentially this evening, that we make it really clear that the plan is in 2025 to reduce this salary. And some of the reason for this is included in the salaries that are in that email. There's a link that shows the salaries of these 3 elected officials in several of our peer counties around the state. And we have the highest paid clerk, treasurer, or register of deeds of all of those counties that I researched. And those counties were similar in population, and they were counties that were neighboring to ours. So that's why this resolution is before us today. I should mention, just for the Finance and Personnel Committee, I did plan to make a motion to amend that based on some feedback we got from Interim Corporation Counsel, that a memorandum of understanding or some sort of an agreement, and I might be paraphrasing you incorrectly, Ms. Dadoun, so if I am, just let me know. But there was a suggestion that for that extra $15,000 approximately each year, this year through 2024, there are probably extra administrative duties or non-statutory duties that we could use help with. And if we spell that out, I've heard this idea from some other folks as well, that if we spell it out, it makes it really clear what would be accomplished for that extra $15,000 each year. So there were 2 paragraphs that I added that I intended as a motion to amend, but it's already in the resolution, so that's not needed anymore. I just want the Finance and Personnel Committee to know that those paragraphs were added since we discussed this on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is that perfectly clear to everyone?
Chair.
Mr. C?
Yes, so I understand that the bottom line is that should we appoint a clerk at the time, as a condition of hiring, the memorandum of understanding will be communicated between the county and whomever we hire, that the salary will be reduced at the end of this term. Is that correct? And additionally, that in the interim, while receiving the higher salary, that additional duties may be added.
That is, as I understand it, yes, that is correct. It's not the best way to do it, but it's the only way we can do it. Okay. All right, I'm going to call for a vote then on this resolution. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have passed the resolution. Now, the next thing on the agenda is appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees. Clint, are we ready to proceed with this?
I do have a couple for you to entertain tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Appointment to Health and Human Services Board, Diane Cox, filling the vacancy of the board created by the vacancy by Deborah Kaiser. and that'll be again for Health and Human Services. Next appointment are for Finance and Personnel Committee, Linda Gentis and Melissa Luck. On to the Finance and Personnel Committee. Their term expires on April 2021, so this will be a reappointment of Melissa Luck for a 3-year term expiring April 2024, and Linda Gentis to be reappointed for a 1-year term expiring 2022, as that will complete her 6 years on the Finance and Personnel Committee. Another one for the Health and Human Services Board, Ingrid Glassbrenner to be reappointed for a 3-year term expiring April 2024. Carrie Severson to be reappointed for a 2-year term expiring April 2023. Simon's Auditorium Board, Chad Crosgrove for a 3-year term expiring April 2024. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For the purpose of conducting this in a timely manner, I will entertain a motion to approve all of those appointments. Mr. Cosgrove, seconded by Mr. Manning. All those in favor of these reappointments, they're actually all reappointments, I believe, except one, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. There will be more coming. We need to address the, I believe we need to address the Highway Committee. I believe that's an annual vote taken on those positions. And probably the Pine Valley Board. I'm not sure how that works, but we've got some catch up to do. All right, thank you. So we'll be revisiting this. Now, brings us to number 16, County Clerk Board Appointment of Elected Positions pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1721. I'm going to call on Mr. Langrick and Ms. Dudon to help me with this. So, Mr. Langrick, please proceed.
Mr. Chair, tonight looking for appointment of a county clerk. Letter of resignation was turned in by Clerk Velasic, who is, I believe, joining us remotely tonight, taking minutes online. The appointment will be for the remainder of the term. This will be underneath state statute, I believe, 1720, if I'm right, Attorney Dadun?
21.
21, thank you. This is going to be an appointment by you folks. So it's going to come down to a motion and a second and a majority vote on arriving at what your appointment's going to be. It was requested by several different supervisors through email to consider doing a ballot approach on arriving at that. As you saw in your email, you have 7 folks interested in this position. The materials were sent out as well as their letter of intent. It was thought tonight in an order of procedure that the county board chair would defer to those candidates for a 2 to 3 minute segment to allow them to introduce themselves, pitch to you their interest in the positions and why they're interested in the positions. And then once we've heard from everybody that is interested in being put in for the position, that we would put their names up on the board as the interested parties in a list, and then we would do a ballot vote. And we would ballot vote until one of the candidates received a majority votes, which tonight would be, it's of presence. So if we have 17 here tonight, that would be a 9-person or a 9-vote majority. You saw the paper applicants that were, or the paper slips that were all handed out to you folks. This would not be a secret ballot. It would be a recorded ballot that we would keep as a public record and document, but you would have a chance to, to get everybody's kind of polling on it versus going through a method of a single nomination and then it's a take it or leave it type of approach. So in teeing that up, Mr. Chair, I would defer to Attorney Dadun if there was, if we'd want to talk more on the procedure, if you wanted to turn the floor over for folks that are interested in petitioning for the position.
I think. Is this on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you want me just to call up the
The
candidates? Or you want to do that? Oh, no, I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Well, we had,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
may I ask how, I'm not sure if Supervisor Nelson is still online, but how will balloting work for any supervisors who are remote?
I think Mr. Nelson can send his selection. He's no longer.
I just
online.
received it. I tried to call him just a second ago. And I planned on allowing him to communicate
I'm
directly
on.
with the Dune.
I'm online.
We've
Mr.
got,
Chair?
That's me calling you, Van.
Yes, I'm online. What do you want me to do? Hello?
Cast your ballot. I'll give my phone to Julie and can tell her I'd like to vote for her.
okay, got it?
No, I didn't hear that.
All right.
Van, are you able to hear me on WebEx?
Yes, yes.
Okay, the phone number that just called you, when we take a vote on it, if you can call back to that number, it'll be positioned by Attorney Dune, and she will understand who you would like to cast your ballot for.
All right.
In other words, she will vote by proxy.
Thank you. All right, we had 7.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we got to get going here, Don.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman. I would like to suggest a possible decorum issue. I understand you're inviting each of the candidates to come forward and speak.
Yes.
I believe that each candidate should be allowed to speak to the board without the presence of the other candidates. Have them wait in the bar or somewhere else. It puts one at a disadvantage to have all of the other candidates hear the presentation of the first, second, and third. Gives them a chance to introduce themselves, possibly rebut.
Well, some of the candidates are remote. They're virtual, so I don't see how that's possible.
Oh. Sorry that they're not here.
This is an open public meeting. So I'm going to veto that, Mr. And explain that we have 7 applicants. And I'd like to invite all of them to either speak to us. We have a mic. Do we have a mic back there that's up here? Oh, it's right here. Okay. Come up to this mic and give us a couple minutes, no more than that, please. If you want to. I mean, I guess I can't force you to, but.
So, Mr. Chair, your list is up on the network right now. The folks that expressed interest in responding to our ad that was posted on our website for over a week was Crystal Adams, Cheryl Dull, Derek Kalish, Jeffrey Harrison, Roseanne Knower, Samantha Kern, and Stacy Kleist. Those are the folks that expressed interest. It would not be like a closed application process if there were other folks here tonight that also raised their hand for consideration. It would be appropriate to also potentially entertain them, but these were the folks that submitted the letter of intent, submitted resume and application materials that were distributed to the body, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, first name on the list is Crystal Adams. Is she here? And does she wish to speak to us? I don't see her. I don't hear a response. So the next name on that list is?
Mr. Chair, the next name is Cheryl Dull.
Cheryl Dull. Does she wish to speak? Okay, the next name is?
Derek Kalish.
Derek Kalish.
Derek will not be able to speak tonight. He is in City Council, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. See, this is going really quickly, Mr. C.
Jeffrey Harrison.
Jeffrey Harrison.
I'm appearing virtually. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Good. Oh, good. My name is Jeff Harrison. I served both, I was a deputy clerk for the City of Richland Center. I was also Victor's deputy for about 4 years. So I have a lot of experience with that office, and I have a great deal of both municipal and county experience with the functions of that office. So I feel like I could slide right in and be a good fit. I'm currently working at the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and elections is a big part of the job of the county clerk. So I have all that relevant experience, both municipal, county, and state. And again, I have a lot of experience in the functions of that office, so I think I'd be a natural fit. Thank you.
I would ask you, Mr. Harrison, are you a county resident?
Yes, I am. I split my time. My wife and I recently separated, so she's in La Crosse. I'm in La Crosse part of the time, and then I have a house in northern Richland County, Quarry Drive in the town of Henrietta.
I believe that's a requirement for a county clerk, so.
Yes, exactly.
All right, thank you. And our next name is?
Next name, Mr. Chair, is Roseanne Knower.
Roseanne Knower, or Knower. Are you available, Roseanne?
She's muted. Possibly.
You're muted if you're trying to speak.
Any further indication, Barb? Recommend we move on. If she joins us, we'll be able to.
Right,
circle
let's
back
go to
her.
the next name on the list, which is?
Next name, Mr. Chair, is Samantha Kern.
Samantha Kern. Okay, the next name on the list is?
This will be the seventh and final name on the current list, Stacy Kleist.
Stacy. There she is. I knew she was here.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Kleist. I have served as Richland County's Clerk of Circuit Court for the past 14 years. I'm the administrator of the Circuit Court, and I am interested in the appointment for County Clerk for these reasons. I have been passionate about providing access, being accountable, and cooperating with other departments, with the board, and with the public that I serve for the past 14 years. I think that the county clerk has done an incredible job with elections, and we can be very proud of the work that he has done for many years. As I understand, he is known as an expert throughout the state in elections. That is a constitutional duty of that job. And as an important job duty, it's one that can be learned. And Wisconsin statute states that anyone who is a resident 18 or older can be considered for such a position. I came from outside of the court system when I became the clerk of court by appointment originally, and then 3 years later through a contested election, and since then twice more through unopposed elections. So I have experience with the elections, but not the fun way. Not that doing the elections from the county clerk's office is a fun way. I know it is very hard work, and I am not afraid of hard work. I enjoy a challenge, and through the last several years, the challenge that I had in the court system was to modernize the office, bring it up to the 21st century, and by doing that, I believe that I've been able to provide better access to services, and that provides better service to your constituents and to mine, to the public. So access is very important to me. Accountability to the board by providing detailed accounting and detailed reporting every month to my oversight committee, and also to the other bodies of the board and to this board as well. And then finally, cooperation. I believe that it's critical that departments cooperate with each other, and that no matter what their duties, that they help each other out. I have done various things over the years that weren't within the duties of the clerk of court office, but I felt that they were for the betterment of all departments. And I think that the county clerk's office even as we have an administrator, and even more so because we have an administrator and we are growing and strengthening our central government, the county clerk's office is going to play an integral role in that central service. And when we talk about strategic planning and we talk about moving forward, the services that people who come to this community to hopefully get the building permits for their new home, to get whatever permits or licenses that they need, there's only one place that they can get those, and that's at our courthouse. When they come into our courthouse, we need to be putting our best foot forward, and we need to be providing top-notch services, because that's all we have in government. In the private sector, we have business and products. In government, we have people and services. So we have to stand on our services and the quality of those services that we provide. And that's where I feel that I can excel, and I hope that I can stand apart from the other applicants that are asking for your support. So I humbly ask for that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was the last name that we had, wasn't it? Yes. Okay. So now I need, I believe, 3 electors, we're going to call them.
If I can interrupt quick, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
There's 2 bits that I think you first need to know about. First, Attorney Dadun is going to tell you of another option that is legally that you can do by state statute. Recommendation on it, on my point, is not there, but it is an option to you. Second, then, is it would be appropriate, if you want to proceed with a ballot, to have a ballot request from the floor with a second and a motion, and then we can get into the ballot process.
Attorney Dadun.
This is from Wisconsin Statute 17.21 sub 3, vacancies how filled. With the elected office of county clerk, if there's a vacancy, it may be filled by appointment of county board for the residue of the unexpired term unless a special election is ordered by the county board, in which case the appointed person would serve until a successor is elected and qualified. A special election, it must be ordered by the board, and the date shall not be less than 62 nor more than 77 days from the date of the order. It's a little different if there's an election year right around the corner, but that's not the situation with our circumstance. I felt like I need to let you know that that is a secondary option. I personally would support getting this over tonight so that we have a county clerk.
Thank you. So we have a couple options before us. One is to hold a special election. No, we don't want to do that, I don't think. But anyway, that's an option. And then the second is to conduct a vote tonight if I get a motion to do the same. Mr. Gotchel? Thank you. Seconded by Mr. McKee.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
just thank Corp Counsel and Administrator Langrick for pulling this together today. This was just put in their laps this morning, so I want to thank them for that.
That's, yes, sir. I appreciate it, and I do thank them as well. That's why we got them. They're good. Okay, we need someone to gather the ballots, so can I appoint those people? Mr. Gotchel's volunteering, Mr. Lopez Murphy's volunteering, Mr. Van Landijk's volunteering. None of them have a hat, so they don't need it. They don't need a hat. They've got boxes. Clint has boxes. So what you're doing is you're voting for one of those names on the list. If we have a majority, which would be 10
We need to,
of those present.
of those present, you'll be voting for one name. If we do not reach a majority on the first vote, we will then be asking for another vote.
Yes.
And much like how they select the Pope, then we'll continue voting until we reach a
And
majority.
do we have a chimney we can send smoke out of then?
We didn't put in for a burn permit.
Over at the pizza oven can shoot black or white smoke. Or blue, I don't remember what it is.
Thank you.
Came refilled out.
Once we get all 17 in person and then Mr. Nelson's remotely, our ballot collectors will assemble at the front table by the chair here, where the ballot collectors will then combine together. We'll sort them all out and sort them out by names, and then we'll take a tally of each one of a name. If we reach a majority, we will simply announce a majority. If we do not reach a majority, then Attorney Dadun will read off each name and how many votes were established for that person. Does everybody have a pen out there? I've got a couple pens in case we do this again.
Okay, we do have a majority.
Okay, if you could announce in the microphone, Attorney Dadun, if we just.
I believe we needed 10. I believe we needed 10 for a majority, and Derek Kalish has 12 votes, or 13 votes.
Okay, and now that is by a ballot vote. This is not an election, so that is just basically a popular polling. So at this point, Mr. Chair, it would be appropriate then to motion from the floor on then appointing Derek Kalish as the Richland County Clerk pursuant of State Statute 1721 to be effective May 1st, 2021.
Mr. Van Landine, are you making that motion? And Ms. Cooper made her first motion. I think last meeting we let her do that too. Okay, we have a motion and a second. According to the popular advisory vote that we just had, to go ahead and appoint Derek Kalish as our clerk, county clerk, to fill out the term of Mr. Vlasic. And he'll have to do some things with the city, because that's where he is right now. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And I would like to thank all of those who put their names in the hat for this position. It's not easy, and I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it, the support the county receives. And this thing was put together very quickly. We didn't have a lot of time to react, but we sure as heck need a clerk. And because the function and the business of the county runs through that office, so it has to be. Thank you for your attention, and thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there like a formal process, like an oath of office that has to be taken?
Yes, Derek he should be sworn in tonight, but.
When he takes office on the 1st. Right.
Yes, it'll be effective on May 1st.
So we have till the 1st of May. Probably the judge, because I know that Victor always swore in everyone, so the judge, I think, swore him in, I believe. In fact, think I remember it happening for some reason out in the courtyard. I'm not sure why we did it that way, but I don't know. My memory is Swiss cheese. Okay. Brings us up to correspondence, I think, in the report on the agenda. Is that correct? I don't have my agenda in front of me anymore.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Who spoke? Oh, Mr. Nelson.
Van
Fire away.
Nelson.
Yes.
I just wanted to explain why I was late coming to the meeting. This was our annual meeting for the township, so I had to wait till that was over, but thank you anyway.
Thank you. And your name is on that list, I think, of those people that we do appreciate the work you do in the township. All right, brings us down to correspondence. Yes, and I received a letter from our administrator, and he was talking about a meeting that happened in an adjoining county, Iowa County, and Iowa County reached out to Richland County to request information regarding our endeavors in contrasting our new nursing home and assisted living facility. Pine Valley is state of the art, folks. It's there. It's what everybody would like. A team comprised of Janetta Kirkpatrick, Steve Alexander, and led by Tom Rislow partook in an Iowa County committee meeting last night, 15 April, and delivered some very enlightening and detailed information to help guide Iowa County through decisions regarding their future nursing home operations. Accolades also go to Carol Worth as well for her continued support and responsiveness in helping us managing our financial history, and to Fred Clary, a lot of you remember Fred Clary, for sharing his recollections with Tom and myself. Richland County was very well represented last night in supporting our local area partners. I was very proud as an administrator and very thankful as an Iowa County resident. Clinton Langrick. So it's nice to get pats on the back. Anything else? Do you have any correspondence for us, Mr. Langrick?
I don't. No report put together for this month in paper. I guess I'd like to take the opportunity to, again, thank all the folks that raised their hand of interest for putting in for the county clerk position, all the supervisors and county chairs that have been helping and supporting with production on putting together agenda items and agendas and minutes and all those types of things as we work through the transition. It's been very much appreciated. You have a fine group of people here that are really helping share the burden. And then also thank our interim corporation counsel, Julie DeDoon. If I can have you stand, take a deep breath without exhaling. If you could just show your face so that we don't recognize you from pre-pandemic. That's what Julie looks like when you see her without a mask someday. And thank you. We hope to be doing a posting for a permanent filling of the vacancy in the near future, and hoping that Attorney DeDoon considers that, and moving forward, we'll keep you abreast on how that process goes, Mr. Chair.
She'll have an opportunity to weigh her decision in the ensuing months. So, okay, Mr. Severson.
Mr. Chair, under correspondence, am I allowed to speak?
Please do.
On behalf of myself and myself only, I'd like to thank Clerk Vlasak for clerking the county board meetings for 30-some years, and has been greatly appreciated for his service, and this would be his last county board meeting as clerk of Richland County.
Thank you, and I think we should give him a round of applause. So if you can hear us, Victor, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. McKee, that guy over there.
A second.
And a second by Mr. Turk. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Give Mr. Langrick back your ballots. We'll use them again. They're blank. Although mine wasn't what I got it.